my last spring at USC with Sam Darnold right next to me, who's the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. And our coach looked at us both and said, I got two NFL starting quarterbacks right here on the couch. But I got to only pick one as the starter during when Sam and I were battling out. Obviously, I did not make it to the NFL, and that guy, 9 years later is a starter in the NFL. But I think I had the talent. I mean, was I the next Peyton Manning, which some people thought I was going to be coming out of high school? Okay, sure. I wasn't to that level, and that might have been a miss. But I don't think I was a bad quarterback per se, and I think I had some unfortunate factors not go my way that would be, I wouldn't be totally truthful if I did not acknowledge those. I had, 5 different head coaches in college. I started like 9 games. I've never lost to a team that was not a top 10 team in the country. I got hurt. That's the biggest one injury-wise. Those are reasons. They're also excuses. I get it. I didn't get it done, but I think, had some of those factors shaken out in a different way, my career could have been a lot different. And then some of the mentality stuff that I talked about, like, I don't think I myself allowed myself to tap into my full potential because of some of the, I was my own worst critic, and I mentally wasn't able to free myself up and play. All these years later, I do think I struggled with at least some level of performance anxiety on a very real basis, and luckily the mental health space in sports has come a long way, but that is definitely something that I think I struggle with. I tapped into my ceiling at an earlier age, which meant that when I got to college, I didn't have as much ceiling left to tap into as other quarterbacks that were my age. The guys like, a Mitch Trubisky or, a Jared Goff or something like that. So those are 3 different pillars, all of which I think played a role in my my college career, or my football career.
Max Brown, welcome to the podcast, my man.
What's up, Nick? Thanks for having me on, man.
Now, it is an absolute pleasure. I am super excited to dive into your journey. I think the audience is going to enjoy hearing from you and hearing just the way that your story has played out. I think is going to be beneficial for a lot of people to hear about. But I'm assuming there's going to be some people who click on this who may not know who Max Brown is and may have not heard about you or your story. And so I'm curious, if someone's just clicking on this and they don't know who you are, why do you think they should stick around and listen to what you have to say?
For your sake, I hope most people don't know who I am, because I mean this podcast is probably going a lot of different places. But no, I think my story starts with the fact that I was the number 1 quarterback in the country coming out of high school. Had offers to go to anywhere I wanted to play college football in the country. I was rated ahead of guys like Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, all guys that were in my recruiting class. And unfortunately, my college career didn't work out, and I'm what sports fans consider a bust, which is not a fun term. It's an uncomfortable term for a lot of people. It's the thing I get the most pushback on when I do create content and talk about it, because, it's not a fun word or fun topic at all. But to me, it's real. To me, it's part of my story. To me, it's not a death sentence. It's just a chapter in my story. And then fast forward, and I'm sure we'll get down some of those chapters, but nowadays I'm a full-time content creator, a college football analyst as well, call games in the fall for the CW and covering the ACC. And yeah, man, living a blessed life, got a lot to be excited about, and a bunch of different chapters as well.
How have your emotions I guess, changed over the years when you hear the words 5-star bust? Because I'm assuming, and feel free to correct me, I think you probably handle it a lot better now than maybe you had previously. So I'm curious, just the evolution of how you've been able to handle that bust label throughout the years.
Yeah, like you alluded to, I mean, it's definitely changed, but I would say, like, it's never been this, like, the term itself, like, to your actual question, it's never been that big of a dark cloud. Like, to me, it just kind of, like, is what it is. And part of me knows deep down that, hey, I didn't get it done, things didn't work out, but it wasn't because I did some crazy thing or got in trouble with the law or drugs and all that. Like, I feel like when I look back at my story, like, I showed up in the way that I needed to have success, and things just didn't work out for me, which allows me to look myself in the mirror and kind of move on with life. So the term itself, I don't think I've struggled with as much, but what has changed emotionally a lot is just my relationship with the game of football in general. When I got done playing at 24, for my entire life, literally, I was quarterback max in my hometown, in high school and college, that first couple years after college, like I was quarterback max. So, navigating that identity crisis, for lack of a better term, without football, without being a quarterback. I was a little bit bitter and frustrated looking back at the game of football and why things didn't work out and that whole deal, all while also covering the game, creating content around the game, which surprises people because it's like, oh, what, Max? Like, you always love football. I think I always in my heart knew that I wanted a relationship with football, and I had the, perspective to say, hey, this too shall pass and my relationship with football will come back around. But there were times where it was a grind. Like I didn't want to do a, X's and O's breakdown for a guy that I thought I was better than 4 years ago, but like that was the good content kind of thing. But then over time, just by, as you get older and you kind of come to grips with your career and all that, my love for football has swung back around, which is amazing. And it's allowed me to do this full time, which I've only been doing for about 9-10 months full time. I used to have a day job and whatnot. Again, partly because I don't think internally I was ready to go full on football content creator. But luckily at 30, that's how old I am right now, things have swung back around and I feel like I have a great relationship with the sport.
Do you feel, and we'll get into your journey here a little bit more, but just 30,000 foot view, do you have any regrets? Do you feel like you gave football everything you had?
I do, and I'm also wary of being like that guy. It's like I got no regrets when like the
Right.
reality is all of us like, have something we wish would have done differently. But like genuinely, man, like I was a guy that I was the classic, again, I say this humbly, but I think if you talk with my teammates, they would validate it. Like I was the guys that were the first one in, last one out kind of guys, and the guys putting in the extra work, the film junkies. My least favorite quote is talent beats hard work when hard work doesn't, or what was it? Talent beats hard work when talent doesn't work, or hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Sorry, I guess that's why it's not my favorite quote because I can't remember it. But I used to always take that like personally because I was the guy with talent and I was the guy with rankings and clout and all that. And so I was like, screw these guys. I think they can come in here and outwork me. Like, I'll show you. I got the talent and the work ethic. So, I don't look back and like regret the investment. I do look back and wish I would have cut myself some slack. I think I was my own worst critic. I think I didn't keep football fun always. I think I was incredibly intense. I think I had a vision that was, I lived every aspect of my life through a football first lens, which I don't think is necessarily the healthiest thing to do. So I have some of those things that, hey, in hindsight, I wish I would have done differently. And when current high school quarterbacks ask me for advice, those are the lanes I go down. But I don't have, and I think it's a big reason why I've come to peace with my career, these huge overarching missed opportunity in terms of what I could have brought to the park and from a regret perspective.
It's interesting that balance of, you brought up being too hard on yourself. And I think for a lot of ambitious people or people who strive to achieve a lot of great things, there is always that balance. And I've heard from other entrepreneurs and other athletes of like, I wish, and I think there's that one article where it's like the regret from the dying. And that's like one of the things that always comes up, or at least it's a common theme. Is like, I wish I wasn't so hard on myself. I wish I gave myself more room to have fun, to find joy. But it's hard to like remind yourself. I at least feel this way. It's hard to remind yourself of that when you're in the moment. Like when you're going through the motions, when you're, as I'm sure for you, when you're going through, the practices, the routine, the film study, it's hard to tell yourself like, hey, Max, remember, we're supposed to be having fun. Like, this is fun. At the end of the day, you're playing a game, which many people are jealous of, for a job, essentially. So just like now that you're out of football, do you feel like you've made strides in being easier on yourself and trying to find that joy and happiness? And I ask from a selfish perspective because I struggle with it all the time.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's funny. I was kind of talking about this with my wife a couple nights ago. I think, have I made strides? Yes. I think, you get more mature, you have some scar tissue that then teaches you a lesson. So then you take that with you in the next chapter. And I definitely think, the way my football career played out certainly helped me as in that early adult phase. But then, like, right now, like, for me, I mentioned I was a content creator. I've recently started pouring a ton of time and resources into making YouTube long form videos. And candidly, they're like not performing. I think they're good. They're not performing. And so naturally, at the end of each day, I'm like, man, like, this is a lot of effort for like us to not see that many results. And you kind of get down on yourself a little bit. And I say that to your question because, on one side, I've had a lot of success with content and I got a successful start to my broadcasting career. And on one side, just a lot of good things that, like, I could be really excited about and super, smell the roses a little bit. But on the flip side, the competitor in me, the guy that used to be in quarterback competitions every day, the guy that knows that, hey, if I would have thrown a touchdown versus Stanford in my week 3 start, hey, my USC career could have been differently if we converted that 3rd and 9, like that one rep comes with me at 30. We're like, hey, this is business and business is competition. Like, there's a lot of healthy aspects to that mindset is my point there, of like the fact that I'm trying to build up this next pillar to give myself leverage, like, could be the result of, hey, if I get fired from my network job here in 5 years and TikTok blows up and China's not able to give it to the US or whatever, and YouTube's my only path towards supporting my family, well, then I'm going to be super glad that I was going through the dog days in 2025 of trying to build out my YouTube channel. So it's like the tug and pull of, hey, there's a lot of healthy aspects to that mindset. The downside is you can be super hard on yourself. I think where I net out is, hey, trying not to judge myself, right? Like the judgment of, hey, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? Max, you're frustrated. Why you're frustrated? Like guilting yourself. That's kind of the rabbit hole I go down. And I think to bring this answer full circle, I think I have made strides in not judging myself for the emotions I have and doing my best. I'm not great at it, but doing my best to kind of stay present and enjoy the like phase that I'm in right now, both personally and professionally.
You said something interesting, or maybe you didn't specifically say it, but you certainly alluded to it, which is getting real specific about like what's frustrating you. And it reminds me of Layla Hermosi, who is this entrepreneur, has an online presence, has this quote about, and I'm going to butcher it, but essentially it's like fear is a mile long and an inch deep, meaning that like fear seems like this big scary thing, but when you actually step into it, it's like, oh, this is it. Like, this is what I was afraid of. And I kind of draw parallels between that and getting frustrated over, we're taking content specifically, but anyone trying to build a business or an online presence, it's like when you get into the specifics of what's actually frustrating you, it almost seems laughable sometimes. I'll do the exercise with myself where, I'll upload YouTube. I feel the pain on YouTube, by the way. I'll upload a YouTube clip or a full podcast, and I'm super excited. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Great guest, great interview. Thumbnail is looking great. Title is perfect, and then it gets like 50 views, and I get down on myself, similar to you, and I get frustrated. But then when I actually try and think about it, it's like, what is actually frustrating me? Like deep down, what's actually getting at me? And it's like, okay, like you had certain expectations for this video that weren't met, but like you are complaining about views on an online platform when you know that you did everything you could and you thought it went great and you put in the maximum amount of effort. And for some reason, it didn't work out. And all those things that you're frustrated about are outside of your control. I can't control what the algorithm is going to pick up. I can't control how many views a certain video gets. Like, there are aspects that are out of my control, but everything that was in my control, I did great. Like, I thought I killed it. So like that for me has helped me reframe some of my frustrations sometimes. Or like, sometimes I'll post an Instagram reel, for example, and it flops and I thought it was great. But then I'll look back and I'm like, if I spent more time editing this clip, or if I put, this picture here or did this transition, maybe it would have done better. So it's also part of it is like taking some of that stuff back into your own sphere of influence and saying, what could I have done better? Like, was this truly the best thumbnail that I could have, made, or the best title, or did I ask the best question? So, I don't know. It's helped me a ton. Just like getting real specific about it has helped me kind of, fight some of those emotions.
Totally. And it sounds like you're taking a step back too and, keeping things into perspective and, trying to take a growth mindset with it all, which is, hey, anyone listening to this podcast, I'm sure is, familiar with those types of terms. So I commend you for that. Where my head goes with your response right there too is like the fear is an inch deep, mile wide kind of thing. Is when I was in growing up in high school quarterback into college, like literally my biggest fear, which again is super privileged, but like my biggest fear was football not working out. Like I could not be the 5-star number one quarterback that wasn't an NFL quarterback. Like I'd be the only one that decade kind of thing. That was like my biggest fear. And then that happened, and I kind of got past that fear. And I think you referenced this. I forget if it was offline before we started this podcast or during it, but there's advantages to being a bust, and that's certainly one of them. I feel like I've lived through my biggest fear, which again, very privileged that's my biggest fear, and it's not really about my livelihood, but it has freed me up. I think it's given me the runway to take more chances because I can kind of trust myself to bounce back from failures or pitfalls. I think my judgment of my how much I care about what others think about me, which is a huge hurdle, especially in the social media conversation. Like that doesn't eat at me as much as it probably would if I didn't have that failure. So yeah, fear can be it's obviously daunting. It impacts all of us, but pushing past that, there's a lot of good on the other side.
I gotta pause real quick because I just realized you were born on February 2nd. Is that accurate?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Dude, we share like same birthday.
1995?
Well, 1997, but same day at least.
There we go. Groundhog's Day, baby.
I keep telling people the most important holiday in the United States, Groundhog's Day. I can't believe I didn't lead off with that, but I just saw in my notes and I was like, oh, that date seems familiar.
That's always like my fun fact is like, oh, my birthday's a holiday in February, and then everyone says Valentine's Day and then can't get it, and I feel like a little smarty pants as a result.
Right. Love it. You mentioned fear. And the fear of not making it to the NFL. Do you ever feel like that fear held you back when you were playing?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that fear of not making it to the NFL, the adjacent factor in that is the fear of making mistakes and what would happen if I made a mistake. And I think especially early on in my college career, I didn't allow myself to make mistakes, which then made me play tentatively, and playing tentatively is just not a recipe for success in any way at high level athletics. And so that mindset in general definitely impacted me, especially early on in my college career.
So let's get to your college career. And I certainly don't want to skip over your amazing high school career because you were the number one QB recruit in the class of 2013, I believe, for a very good reason because you absolutely dominated at Skyline High School, I believe. So just mindset in high school, did you have the mindset of I want to be the best QB, I want to go to a top ranked football program, I want to make the NFL, or did you kind of just stumble into that?
The former, very much the former. Yeah, I mean, I can remember first grade recess, first time you're out there, balls rolled out. I was quarterback from day one. I can remember first padded practice, third grade. My team was the only team in the league that threw the football. I was quarterback. And I loved it. Like that was the dream. It wasn't some sort of thing that like my parents were pushing on me or anything like that. Like I was very much wired that way. I was the kid that would go home and watch SportsCenter for 4 hours and then NFL Network for another 3 hours after that. Like this was not only the dream, but this was the calling. This was the purpose. And then I was lucky enough to grow up in a suburbs outside of Seattle. I went to a public school called Skyline, and in the run that I was there, we were nationally rated pretty much every year, which is like unheard of for a public school in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. Not a private school, not illegally recruiting. Like the run that we had in our little Sammamish pocket was special. I say that because it was very much a football community. Rich in tradition, a lot of state championships, the whole deal. And so it was, again, from age 5 all the way up until I was 18, it was like this was the mission, this was the calling. And then when I got to sophomore, junior year, my high school had a rich tradition and great in-state high school quarterbacks. And so I always just kind of had in my mind that you go play for a blue blood program. Like my parents went to Idaho, so I didn't really have like the hometown tie to Washington or anything like that. And I just was always in my DNA that you go play with the best. And so, When offers started coming in, I was really only interested in the blue blood programs, and sure enough, landed at USC.
What's that experience like being recruited? How just in general, how did it make you feel? Like what was actually going down, and why did you eventually choose USC?
Yeah, I was hyper aware of not letting. I was just always, and it maybe worked against me in college because I was always, I think I'm a people pleaser. I care what people think about me. But the good side of that is in high school, I never wanted to be the arrogant douchebag in high school, or I'd hope that most people I went to high school with were like, yeah, Max Brown was like the cool dude. I mean, he was, we could go up to him and say, what's up, even though he was, the 5-star number one quarterback recruit in the country. So I was always wary of that dynamic. So some of the things you see in the movies of like, guys being the arrogant, cocky guy at the party and all that and that stuff. I hope people don't say that about me. I don't think they would, but I was always wary of that dynamic. So it wasn't as much as like this out of body, like, I walk on water type of thing. I think it was very much just, you know, uh, my best friends in high school, a lot of them were my best friends in elementary school. And again, it felt fitting. It felt like this was part of the mission. This was part of the cause. It wasn't some, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're here. It was like, nah, dude, we've been training for this since we were in fourth grade kind of thing, which again, kind of sounds crazy as I say that out loud as a 30-year-old, but that was the Kool-Aid that I was drinking. And I couldn't have imagined a childhood any other way. And to button it all up, there's a quote that when I won the Gatorade National Player of the Year, they had me like say a few words, and like I genuinely mean it. I had like the fairy tale childhood career, like genuinely, or childhood upbringing in terms of, again, public school, won state titles with my high school homies, got all the awards, went to the dream school as a quarterback. I mean, we're not even talking like a basketball player, like all American quarterback, that kind of thing. It was amazing, man.
Did you also date a cheerleader in high school? Because that would
Yeah, good
complete
question.
that would complete the high
Uh,
school fairy tale.
Literally, I did not did have a girlfriend in high school, not a cheerleader though.
Why USC though? Because I think you got recruited by Oklahoma, Washington, Alabama. I mean, you're the number one QB recruit. Why not go to a school like Bama?
Well, people forget, but at the time, that offseason, USC was the number one team in the country. So that's when Matt Barkley, Robert Woods, Marquise Lee were coming back. So it wasn't as, not that USC's random, but USC at that time was like, hey, there's a runway where USC is going to be back. And I also think as a 30-year-old, like I'm literally the prime age of, I was in fourth and fifth grade when USC was in the national title games and won 2003. I was in third grade when they won their first national title. So again, as a West Coast kid, USC was the pinnacle of college football. And so fast forward when I'm third grade to then senior in high school, you get that call, you get that opportunity, and then a bunch of tactical reasons too. Like USC didn't take a quarterback in the class above me. I had an opportunity to start as a true freshman. Getting the USC degree, living in Southern California, there was just nothing not to like about USC outside of the sanctions, which I probably underestimated the negative impact of USC being on sanctions. But you can't win all the factors.
And how do the recruiting visits usually go?
Yeah, so it was a different rules when I was there, partly because of my generation of quarterbacks, where every school only takes one quarterback, so it's kind of a musical chairs domino effect situation where guys are kind of waiting on me to commit, and then all the schools kind of trickle out and find their guy from there. And you could not take official visits until your September 1st of your senior year when I was in college or when I was in high school. And I committed as a junior in high school, which was very normal, like April of my junior year. So they changed the rules because that doesn't make sense. You should be able to use your official visits before, the society tells you it's time to commit kind of thing. So I only took one official visit, USC. I took unofficial visits, went to Oklahoma once, did a Midwest swing, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Michigan. But I didn't, to your earlier question, like I reined in the chaos that can happen with recruiting pretty intentionally. I was not a guy that was talking to a new coach on the phone every day after high school. Like that to me was daunting, and I hated the idea of kind of playing games with coaches. So I got recruited, don't get me wrong. I got a bunch of offers, don't get me wrong, but it was not the circus that it is for some guys.
And whether it's your own journey or from others that you may know, just being involved with it, I'm curious because I don't know a ton about it, but just like you mentioned the chaos of the recruiting, journey, and like what's so chaotic about it? Just the fact that so many colleges are reaching out to you, and then what do you think these coaches are looking for? Like, are they asking you personality questions? Like, are they looking for a fit? Like, what's their objective?
Yeah, and it's even more chaotic now because there's real freaking money on the line. Like for people that aren't huge college football fans, like the recruit that was me 12 years ago is making seven figures out of high school easy. Easy. I made zero, which is funny. I was born 7 years too old. But so now the stakes are even more so where, all those factors that I just ran through of why I went to USC would have been totally different now, or could have been totally different now with money on the line. If Washington State comes to my door and says, "Hey, we'll pay you $1.5 million per year to come to Washington State," that conversation changes in a hurry because that's life-changing money. So that's first and foremost nowadays where the circus comes in. But back in my day, the circus happened just because again the stakes of it are so high in terms of college football. It means so much to the health of universities. It's a huge business, so much money, and quarterback recruiting can dictate the health of not only a football program, but an entire university that's worth billions of dollars. So the stakes of just all these decisions, and hey, if you can be a coach that can lock in the 5-star quarterback recruit, like that's where the circus comes in of, hey, coaches maybe showing up at your high school 3 days in a row in the cafeteria, or coaches calling you all the time, or and to my earlier point, like guys buying into that because they want the fame and they want the hoopla of so and so visited me today, and they're posting stuff to social media, or they're leading schools on of like, here's my top 10 schools, and they tag 10 different schools to get, all the Twitter people arguing and all that. Like you can tell how it can ramp up in a hurry. And it's interesting being I was a 2020 or 2013 recruit. It's an interesting landmark in the history of college football, I'd argue, because Instagram was not part of my recruitment at all. Twitter was not at all. I remember posting, "Hey, I'm committed to USC," like after my announcement to Twitter, but like that was it. Anyone younger than me, social media was a presence in their recruiting, period. And so it's an interesting kind of, to your circus comment, the stakes have risen with the rise of social media.
You beat me to it. I was going to bring up social media next, and just the impact that that's had on college sports. I argue not even college sports, but professional sports. I mean, it's touched every sports league and has definitely changed the way that athletes interact with the media and athletes interact with the fans. So I wanted to ask you about that. But real quick, I think I saw the other day Cooper Flag made like 28 million his 1 year at Duke, or it was like reported 28 million. Like, and I'm assuming that's like sponsors and other stuff thrown into there, and it's probably just a huge melting pot of money. But like that's insane. So like
Yeah.
you now get to the point where it's like if Cooper Flag wanted to stay another year at Duke and develop, his body would mature 1 year older. He could. Now he wouldn't necessarily have the reason because he was already going to be the number one pick, but like for athletes who are maybe on the fringe of like, do I declare for the draft? Do I stay another year? Now that you have, financial incentives, it seems like we're going to have more college athletes maybe stay with their college teams for longer.
It's a fair point. It happened this past year in college football. 28 mil seems real steep.
Yeah.
Not to undercut your point, but that seems like a lot. But like for reference, this year in college football, Carson Beck had an opportunity, Georgia's quarterback, to potentially go to the NFL. Decides to go back to school. Reports are he's getting paid $4 million a year as like one of the prize transfer quarterbacks. And if he would have gone in the third round or fifth round of the NFL draft, he wouldn't have made that much. In fifth round of the NFL draft, like that's where Shador Sanders went. So to your point, like, and a lot of people were saying Quinn Ewers should have done, the former Texas quarterback, he should have done what Carson Beck did. He did not. He went to the NFL. But your point is spot on. And not to make this a whole football podcast, but look at Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward, the number one pick in the NFL draft, he could have gone to the NFL. Probably would have been a third round pick in 2024. Get paid, a couple $1 million a year, a few $1 million a year. Instead, goes back to school, gets more money than that at Miami, and then raises his draft stock. I made a video on this. Like, you can make the argument he made himself $40 million by going back to school raising his draft stock and making money along the way as well.
Yeah, again, not to make this a whole football thing, but like, do you think that ultimately and the NIL it has been good for college sports?
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Loaded question. I know. Yeah.
I mean, it just totally depends on who you are. I think it's made it worse for the fan because it started conference. It's played a role in conference realignment. It's the loyalty that fan bases used to have to a starting quarterback. That if they hit on a recruit, we know we would have them for the next 4 years, regardless of what money would come to play. It's hurt the fan for sure. But as a former 5-star quarterback that missed out on at least $1 million, and I've seen how it impacts, my life's fine. I live a great life. I'm super blessed. I got no complaints. But I've seen teammates of mine that they're 30 years old. They were once 5-star recruits. Their lives are not necessarily in a better spot. And that to me is good that NIL has fixed that. I think we need to rein it in and that, but I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's been good in some elements. It's been bad in others. And just totally depends on the lens that you're looking at it through.
Yeah, I saw someone suggest, I think it was actually Bill Simmons, suggest that there should be like a 2-year, like a player should be required to stay at a team for 2 years at least. Like if you transfer to a team, you need to stay there at least 2 years, and it would help rein in some of the year-to-year transfers that we're seeing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I too am kind of pissed about the conference realignment, especially, Pac-12. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up watching Pac-12 college football. Seeing it go away definitely hurts. And then you have like weird scheduling stuff where like, USC has to go to like Minnesota and it's like all this travel on the players. And it kind of leads me to my next question too, because I recently had Cesar Ruiz on the podcast, offensive lineman for the Saints. And he was talking about how he thinks the college schedule is tougher than the NFL. Just for the simple fact that, you're in class, you got all this stuff that you have to worry about. And then you got practice, obviously, as you well know, you got games, you got travel. And now on top of that, you have, cross country travel on the weekends for some of these teams. Just curious, like your experience at USC, like, did you feel the strain of that college schedule?
That's an interesting take, too. I hadn't thought about it that way. I would say most people would probably disagree with that take just because the NFL, 17 regular season games plus preseason, all that. But to his point, those guys, it's a full-time job, not having to go to school. Where did you go to school? Do you know?
He went to...
Because if you're a Stanford guy or something, that might dictate your answer.
Michigan.
Michigan. All right, Michigan's a good school. So yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. But to answer your question, I feel like this is a theme of the podcast. I was prepared for what college football was going to be. I went to a really intense high school program. Again, in my community, football was intense. I was prepared and was not naive to what it meant to be a Division I football player versus, I think there's other people that don't have that upbringing, and they're very wide-eyed walking into day one at a USC football program, and it's like, wait, we got to lift how much? Wait, we got to eat how much? Wait, we got to have how many grams of protein a day? I was kind of doing that already, which is a blessing, and, would not change that for a world, and thanks to my high school program. But, and honestly, I thought my high school was harder academically than USC was, so... I was super fortunate to have the upbringing I had, as a long story short. So I think I handled the rigor of college football well. But don't get me wrong, it's a grind. Not gonna shake it. It's a grind. But man, I feel like I'm being a little bit arrogant in this podcast, but I feel like I was prepared for it.
Yeah, that's gonna be the title of this video. Max Brown, the arrogant number 1 QB recruit.
There you go.
I'm just messing. Take us, listen, most of the audience, if not all, is not ever going to experience being this, a quarterback for a college program like USC, going to a school like USC. Just I don't know if you want to break it down as a week in the life or just a day, what a normal day would look like for you, but take us behind the scenes of what it's like to be, a quarterback for a program like USC.
Yeah, well, when you're at USC and you're in LA and there's like five different pro sports teams and there's people on Greek Row who have more fame than you, like it's actually not as crazy as you might think, which was funny because that was kind of the selling point by Matt Barkley, the quarterback that he was at USC when I was a high school recruit of like, hey, you can come to USC and be a normal student versus if I had gone to Tennessee or Alabama or Florida in the Southeast, my answer to this question might be a lot different, and it also might be a lot different if I started more games at USC and was more successful, because then you get all the paparazzi and all that stuff. But don't get me wrong, like being a scholarship quarterback at USC, it was a blessing. You definitely when you're walking around campus, like people are definitely like aware of who you are. Like not every single person, but there's certainly that allure a little bit. But in some ways, it was kind of like high school in that way, in terms of just like you kind of know who the football player guys are, at least for the high school that I went to. But a lot of it again is there's so many people at USC doing on their own pursuits and have their own things going on that everyone's kind of in their own world a little bit. But I made sure to take care of business school wise. I got a couple degrees from USC. I got another one at Pitt, and took pride in kind of just being, as much as I could, just the normal guy. Like I was in a fraternity at USC, which always kind of shocks people, but there were like 20 of us football players in a fraternity. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like there were certainly its perks. Certainly you're cutting a line to a party every once in a while. Not every party, which I heard the stories of when USC was winning the national championships, they would get in every party no matter what. But like we had our certain perks, but it was nothing crazy.
Yeah, I always laugh. There's like a LA sports rankings where it's like, Lakers are number one, just in terms of like how much the people of LA care about certain sports teams. It's like, Lakers are number one, and then, it's like blah blah blah. And then like USC football is number five ahead of like the Clippers. And these are like fan rankings, so it's like supposed to be a little I guess satirical, but like
Yeah, I mean,
USC football is
probably
like top
Lakers,
five.
Dodgers.
Right.
Does USC football get three? I mean, Clippers maybe, but yeah, I mean, LA. It's the classic. All the people love shitting on LA sports fans, but the reality is there's just a lot of other stuff going on.
Well, it's like the same thing with like Miami. Like I view those two cities very similar. It's like people shit on Miami fans too, but it's like when you're in Miami and you can go to the beach and you can go, hang out, and there's so many distractions. It's like, well, maybe we don't have to watch every Miami Heat game. So I don't know. There's definitely a little bit of that. The West Coast gets, I think, a bad rep for a lot of that stuff because I mean I grew up in California, so I grew up in the Bay Area. And there's a ton of diehard fans. Like, go try telling, a diehard 49ers or a diehard Lakers fan, like, hey, you guys don't care about your team. Like, they would, that would be a fight. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I always say like when the Pac-12 disbanded, a huge just what I think is false branding is that they're just people didn't care out west. That wasn't it at all. And I think if USC was not taking off sanctions and all that, the aura around West Coast football in general could have been a lot different, because I live in ACC country now. Love the conference, great conference. It's no different than the Pac-12. I could honestly make an argument it's worse from a support, but because it's on the East Coast, it's in that time zone, it's adjacent to SEC country. It doesn't get that molding, which I think was unfair for the Pac-12 and West Coast football.
yeah, no, absolutely. Max, as you look back on your college career, so I believe you spent 3 years at USC. You finished off at Pitt. You transferred to Pitt for your last year. Why do you think, and feel free to correct me here, but why do you think you did not reach your full potential in college? Or do you think that you did?
Definitely did not. That's for sure. Yeah, on the most basic level, like, I had a lot of successful days on practice fields at Pitt and USC that never were able to come to light on game days. Not never, but very rarely came to light on game days on Saturdays. And that's unfortunate. I've had multiple times throughout my career that, and I don't think coaches were just blowing smoke up my behind, but they were saying, remember sitting on my couch after my last spring at USC with Sam Darnold right next to me, who's the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. And our coach looked at us both and said, I got two NFL starting quarterbacks right here on the couch. But I got to only pick one as the starter during when Sam and I were battling out. Obviously, I did not make it to the NFL, and that guy, 9 years later is a starter in the NFL. But I think I had the talent. I mean, was I the next Peyton Manning, which some people thought I was going to be coming out of high school? Okay, sure. I wasn't to that level, and that might have been a miss. But I don't think I was a bad quarterback per se. And I think I had some unfortunate factors not go my way that would be, I wouldn't be totally truthful if I did not acknowledge those. I had, 5 different head coaches in college. I started like 9 games. I've never lost to a team that was not a top 10 team in the country. I got hurt. That's the biggest one injury wise. Those are reasons. They're also excuses. I get it. I didn't get it done, but I think, had some of those factors shaken out in a different way, my career could have been a lot different. And then some of the mentality stuff that I talked about, like, I don't think I myself allowed myself to tap into my full potential because of some of the, I was my own worst critic, and I mentally wasn't able to free myself up and play. All these years later, I do think I struggled with at least some level of performance anxiety on a very real basis. And luckily the mental health space in sports has come a long way. But that is definitely something that I think I struggle with, because I looked back and I remember studying the playbook in a astronomy class before my first spring practice at USC. That sounds great. Well, there's a lot of guys, and my most successful guys, that view the first spring practice as like, dude, this is not that deep. Like, let's just go out here and have fun. And I think that mindset could have helped me a lot. So I certainly could have done myself some favors. And then to give you the third pillar, which is more like tactical, I do think, and I've alluded to this a couple times, I was a kid who worked very hard at a young age, which then I think allowed me to tap into my ceiling at a younger age than other people, because there's a lot of my peers that you kind of wake up as a junior in high school and you're like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to play college football. Like, it'd be kind of cool to do this thing. Like, now let's work hard. Now let's get in a weight room. Now let's get a private coach, all that stuff. I was doing that as like a 7th grader, as like a 6th grader, which is amazing because it allowed me to have an awesome college career or high school career. But I do think when I look back objectively, I tapped into my ceiling at an earlier age, which meant that when I got to college, I didn't have as much ceiling left to tap into as other quarterbacks that were my age. The guys like, a Mitch Trubisky or, a Jared Goff or something like that. So those are 3 different pillars, all of which I think played a role in my my college career or my football career.
What about luck? You alluded to it, but just the role of luck, and it's something that I always have to remind myself, like, just how important luck is in success. And I think a lot of times people, myself included, try and dismiss it because sometimes it's stuff that's out of our control. You mentioned having 5 coaches during, your college tenure. Arguably, I mean, that was entirely out of your control. Like, you could, there's nothing you could have done to have changed that. I think of, and people who listen to the podcast are going to roll their eyes, I think of my guy Brock Purdy as like the perfect example of luck working in someone's favor. Like, our first 2 starting quarterbacks both get hurt, Trey Lance and Jimmy G. And here comes 3rd string Brock Purdy. And, he had to prepare and be ready and take advantage of the opportunity. But, if Jimmy and Trey don't get hurt, we perhaps never know about Brock Purdy. So just what are your thoughts on luck and the role that it plays in success?
I think it's valid. And again, luck has a weird connotation where it almost feels like you just kind of stumble upon it. And, if you got lucky, then you're taking a victim mindset. I guess that's the way. I think a lot of people will say, hey, luck, you're being a victim if you blame it on that. But if you take it to your point earlier about like a 30,000 foot view, it definitely plays a role. 100%. 100% for some of the factors that I mentioned, the injury alone, like if I don't get hit there, like is my story different kind of thing. I think it's a factor. It's a very real factor. I think people are being naive if they don't acknowledge it as a factor. But it's also something that I don't think it's healthy to kind of hang my career, because I've seen the opposite side of, athletes where their careers don't work out and, they're blaming everything on how they got screwed and all that stuff. And even if there is a seed of truth to that, I think that's a slippery slope. I think it's a negative slope. I've seen that impact people late into their 20s, for the rest of their life. And so it's one of those things, I think we can acknowledge it, but if you embody luck as like the driving factor of why things didn't work out, I I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Are you familiar with Sahil Bloom on Twitter?
Familiar with him? I think I follow him. I'm not like deep into him, deep into his content.
So he has, speaking of luck, I'm trying to pull up, he had a tweet, but I think I stumbled on to his newsletter. He has a thing called the 4 types of luck. And actually, I don't think it's his thing. I think he just repurposed it from someone else who published it like 30 years ago. But basically, he proposes that there's 4 types of luck. There's blind luck, luck from motion, luck from awareness, luck from uniqueness. So the first type of luck, blind luck, is like, you were born on this day,
Yeah.
here are your parents, you put, whatever, you guess that the roulette wheel is going to hit on 16. That's blind luck. Luck from motion is, as the name kind of says, it's a result of your motion. So you're creating stuff, you're creating collisions through hustle and energy that you're inserting into an ecosystem. This type of luck is derived through the expansion of your luck surface area from simple movement. The increase in collisions opens you up to more lucky events. So, you start a new job and start saying yes to every opportunity. You're working hard, running around, meeting new people. You're saying you're increasing your luck surface area. And then he has a 3rd type, says luck from awareness. So it says it's a result of your awareness and depth of understanding of a specific domain. This depth of understanding within a given arena allows you to become very good at positioning yourself for lucky breaks to benefit you. And then he has, this entrepreneur summarizes it. You become very good at spotting luck. You can spot luck from a mile away because of your depth of knowledge and experience. And then the last type of luck is luck from uniqueness. I know this is going on a little bit long, but this is the last one.
No, this is good stuff.
It says it occurs when your unique set of attributes attracts specific luck to you. It actually seeks you out. And the example that he gives, he says, you've spent years tinkering with generative AI models. Your unique passion and earned expertise means that you're often called on by founders and CEOs building at the forefront of AI, and you're able to earn equity in a variety of interesting projects that will likely return millions. Your unique and quirky hobby attracts luck to you. That was a lot, but I remember first reading about it, and I really like the fact that somebody broke out luck, because you just mentioned victim mentality, and it's like, if you just view luck as this like blind thing that happens and you have no control over, then I think it is a slippery slope into victim mentality. It's like, oh, I'm just not lucky. Like this podcast isn't doing well because I'm just not lucky. But when you look at it in terms of like these 4 separate stages or aspects of luck, I don't know. It gives you a little more control, and I think it gives you a little more confidence that you can actually influence certain events.
I agree. My favorite one of those, and I'm going to steal that after this podcast, but just as like the luck of motion, right? Or I don't know if it was emotion or motion in general, but making moves, saying hi to people in the hallways. As a content creator myself, that's how I view every single post, right? I never know who it's going to touch. I don't know what eyeball it's going to see, and I do think that's something that people don't understand with content. Content creators do, but people maybe on the outside of, wait, Max, how does this one post about, I made a post 2 weeks ago about, hey, if every NFL quarterback played a game of Survivor, who would win? Well, that seems like a fun, cool, Max. Like, oh, you spent how many hours doing that? Whatever. But like, you never know if that gets in front of some agency, social media agency that's like, hey, this is a creative idea. We have something where what happens if every quarterback drank a different kind of soda and it's a soda brand or something, and they try to like work with me, and like that's how the dots were connected. And I think that's the game of making money on social media, at least from like a brand deal influencery side. But I'm going down a different path. But like, I love that one, and I think there's so much truth in that. And honestly, it's why I push back. I feel like our culture has a little bit of we're in a kick right now on the back. So if hustle culture happened from like 2013 to 2020, pandemic happened and we kind of pushed back on hustle culture. And then now I feel like there's a lot of messages about like setting up boundaries and saying no and things like that. There's truth to both sides. You got to have the self-awareness to understand where you sit on that. But I don't like that mindset, because I think the saying no mentality works against this whole luck of motion type of deal, where if you're getting out there, you're doing things, you're saying yes, you don't always have to have like an exact result for every action that you do. That's setting yourself up for some cool things to happen in your life, not only financially and business wise, but personally and just with your, the relationships you have as well.
Well, I think someone who we both mutually know, Adam Brenneman, like I think of him as someone who started creating content and recently signed a deal with Front Office Sports, I think, to do content for them and the podcast. Like that's an example of someone who like, I guess you and him are similar in a way, both content creators, both, commentators. But, he just started creating content and people can say, someone who's looking up his journey and be like, oh, he got lucky, he got signed by Front Office Sports or he did this. It's like, well, like there's a lot of work that went into that. And he created a lot of those collisions, like as the article alludes to, and set himself up for that luck to occur. I Go ahead.
I was saying, I actually sorry to cut you off, but I know Adam. I don't know his entire business model, but we get compared a lot, and he's a good dude. We talk a couple times a year. But I actually think Adam's a great example of that fourth pillar of luck of entrepreneurship or whatever, because I don't know what Adam would say to this question, but from my vantage point, Adam's career has taken off as a result of the work that he did in 2020 and 2021 when he was the only sports guy, only football guy that was creating TikTok on this dancing platform. And what are you doing over there? And that's where he got a lot of traction, a lot of followers, and he was kind of the first to market to say a entrepreneurship Silicon Valley term. He was first to market, and now there's a lot of people trying to emulate what he's built, but because he kind of put his head out there when it wasn't mainstream, before it was cool and all that, he's reaped the benefits of that. And honestly, when I look at Adam, it's the luck of entrepreneurship.
That's a good point too. Like I like that. I always think about that with podcasting too. It's like if you look at a lot of the big podcasts nowadays, a lot of them started either right at the pandemic or right before it. And then there was that huge explosion in podcasting and new podcasts coming on and people starting to listen to podcasts. And then they rode that wave and now they're, top 10 on the charts. So yeah, it's interesting too. Cause like part of that you could say is like timing, right? It's like, maybe if I had started this podcast back in 2020, who knows, maybe I'd be, top 5 sports podcasts right now, or maybe I wouldn't, but like, it's crazy. Sometimes I like if I think too much about it, I like think myself into a corner, and it gets a little too much. But
I mean, you're talking my language too, because my first job out of football was working for Gary Vaynerchuk, who is like the OG content creator, and I remember him literally calling us all in 2019, the spring of 2019, being like, "We got to go all in on TikTok." And sure, I was sitting there, and I did not, and I think my career would be in a dramatically different spot if I had went all in on football content in 2019 on TikTok. I think I would be in a totally different stratosphere, which is fine. But I try to flip the script to our earlier point of like, all right, the lesson there is, hey, how can I use that experience to try to look at where the puck's going down the line? And for me in my life, I look at my niece and my nephew and I say, hey, they're on YouTube more than they're watching linear television. I think YouTube is the present, but I certainly think YouTube's the future. In my opinion, for people that, watch my YouTube long form stuff, like I try to take what's working for other YouTube creators in different sectors, whether it's, US history, European history, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, whether it's CNN, and try to take their format of like 9 to 10 minute, because I think that's the sweet spot on YouTube when people are on the drive to the grocery store or people are eating their lunch at their desk kind of thing. And how can I make the most condensed, valuable 9 to 10 minute piece of football content? And that's I think it hasn't popped for me yet. I think I'm putting good stuff out there, but like I try to flip the script of like, I paid the price for not acting in 2019. What can I do so in 2030 it's like, yo, I'm glad I did that in 2025, because the content game is it's getting more and more competitive, but it's always going to stay evolving. And I think the ones that get put themselves out there, be unique, create their own type of niche and series, can reap the benefits down the road that then everyone else is copying them.
No, that's extremely well said. I don't know how true this is, but I heard from he's like a YouTube advisor, I guess. He said that apparently like the gaming channels, like the gaming creators, like you should always look to see what they're doing because they seem to be like on the forefront of
That's good
like
intel.
innovative
There we
thumbnails.
go.
Yeah,
That's good
so
intel. That's good for me. That's good for me to hear. Yeah, and I also think there's two sides to it too. There's like, all right, being first to market, tons of valuable, stuff there. But it's also like not being afraid to innovate, because the way you become first to market is when you create a different type of way of saying that or delivering that, or a unique show, or a different way of thinking about it, or a different way to combine it. And just by continuing to show up, continuing to have quality at bats, whatever it is in life, that's a big term that I use. You can kind of create your own luck to bring this full circle of, just finding something, uncovering something that you never thought possible.
yeah, and I just think that good content, my opinion, good content always rises to the top. I mean, I'm in the world of podcasting, but like if you're good at interviewing people, if you're charismatic, if you're good at talking, I think eventually with a long enough time horizon, like you will find some level of success. Now, are you going to be Joe Rogan? Maybe not, but can you carve out, to your point, maybe like your, piece of the pie in this specific niche or whatever? I think it's very possible. And then also just like thinking about like, okay, like what's next for podcasting? Like I feel, this like interview style is, I don't want to say has gotten stale, but has certainly gotten saturated over the last couple of years. So it's like, okay, what's next? Like you look at, what's that show? Was it Hot Ones? The one where they eat the wings and do
Yeah.
the interview.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. Like that's innovative. It's like, who would have thought like eat something hot and then, but also it's like an interview. So you get the entertainment from like their reaction, but then it's also like, oh, tell me about your career. So it's like stuff like that. It's like, how can you innovate or continue to innovate, to your point, on just like a format that has, in my opinion, gotten a little stale?
That's always top of mind for me too. I get asked all the time of like, oh, why don't you have a podcast? And to be honest, it's because I want to like, I think the market's very saturated, and I'm wary of like, I know how much time it has to take to like, you have to put in to have success. And for me, I'm always thinking like, hey, what is that unique lens? And I've thought about a couple things. One is, most podcasts right now are guest based. So it's, hey, you're sitting down with me and you're talking to me for an hour about, a wide range of topics, all good stuff. This conversation's been great. But, some of your audience might like the football stuff, might not care about the social media stuff. I think the next wrinkle is potentially topic first, guest second. The reason people don't do that is it's harder. It's more work, right? But if you had a topic where you're talking about, sports content creators, or, hey, I talked to 4 different 5-star quarterbacks and here's the lessons I learned. And then the subject is around 5-star quarterbacks featuring Max Brown, Deshaun Watson, da 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 da. Like, I think to like that's a series or a type of pillar that I think will get more and more traction. And you've seen other people do it. Like there's people that, piece it together. Wall Street Journal is kind of one of them with their content. But yeah, there's, like you said, different ways to kind of slice it. And, there's, it's also, I'm hemming and hawing a little bit because every single year you see someone popped that just kind of showed up. And on the surface, it's like, dude, they're not anything special, but they had the right guest at the right time, at the right topic, said the right thing. And again, just by showing up, sometimes you can create your own luck.
Shots on goal, baby. Just get the pucks to the net. That's all you need to do. Well, not all you need to do, but a lot of times it is the secret. Real quick, we'll wrap up, and then I got like 2 more questions, and I'll let you go. I saw this. I actually think it'd be super cool if I did a podcast where it's like, for example, like to your point about like topic first, guest second. It's like, here's Max Brown, who was #1 QB recruit, 2013, but didn't make it to the NFL. And then here is, I don't know, Brock Purdy. We took him as an example, like not recruited at all, played college football, was like the last pick in the draft, like 2 like very different stories and very different journeys. And it's like, I have them both on this podcast, and it's like, we all talk about, you can ask Brock questions like, dude, what was it like to get, no offers out of high school? Or he could be like, dude, what was it like getting recruited by Bam and all? And it's like, it's just the dichotomy of like two very different journeys. I think something like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I literally just came out with a YouTube video about Luis Perez's story, the Spring King. He's like a journeyman 30-year-old quarterback. He's quarterback in the UFL right now for the Renegades. Like, had a ton of success in the spring league. He's like had workouts with the Chargers and whatnot. But we were talking about that of like, dude, your story is about being 30 years old, no offers, still playing pro football, making it happen, all that. My story is the exact opposite. 5-star guy, didn't have a ton of success in college, no pro football pursuit really outside of 18 months of training. Total opposite stories. Yeah, no, I think you're onto something. For me, because a lot of my story's been about the failure and then pivoting off of that. Ryan Clark's done this a little bit with his podcast, like The Pivot, where he kind of gets into this. But I think it'd be awesome to talk to people, wide-ranging topics, football and not, about diving deep into their failure. Again, it's a word that people balk at. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it'd be awesome to just have that's my, where my head's at right now is like, I've had a podcast and like all we're talking about is diving deep into like why it happened, your thoughts on failure, how you adjusted at it, good and bad. But again, like what's your unique angle to your podcast to try to stand out, try to differentiate yourself, or not just podcast. That could be any of your content. That's like the name of the game now when so many people want to be content creators.
No, absolutely. I think somebody did a newsletter where it's like they only highlighted failed entrepreneurs, which I thought was super cool because all you ever hear about are the success stories. And then you kind of get that paradox of like, oh, if I just do what they did, I'll be successful. But what you don't see are probably the thousands or the hundreds of people who did exactly what the successful entrepreneur did and still failed. So
yeah.
I love your point about failure, and I think that would be super cool because I know that there's a ton that we can learn from failure, even from your own journey. Like if we just did the past hour on, your failure to make it to the NFL, let's say, right? Like I think that there's a ton to learn from that. Just like there's a ton to learn from someone who was a top recruit out of high school, dominated college football, was a top draft pick, right? Like that's also, there's some lessons along that path.
Totally. There's someone out there that was trying to build Amazon and Jeff Bezos executed better than them. Talking to that person right now, I think would be fascinating, at least if they're not. And even if they are bitter as shit, that still would be a good combo. But it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Max, I got a couple. We could do these rapid fire, and then I got one last question for you, and we'll end the pod.
Sounds
these
good.
These are more fun. You played with Sam Darnold at USC. I at least read the stories about Sam and coming out of college, out of USC, obviously very highly regarded. What was your experience with Sam like at USC, and did you know back then that this guy's the real deal?
Experience was great. Yep, I knew he was the real deal. He's a great dude, super down to earth. He actually was recruited. He wasn't as big of a recruit, relatively speaking, as other USC quarterbacks. He kind of had a late wind in high school, so came in with not a ton of hype, to be honest, and down to earth guy. The line I always use is, we're still buddies, but we would have been, I think, really close buddies if we were not the same position. He's a great dude. One of the best one of my favorite quarterbacks that I've played with. Great dude. Been happy for his success, and yeah, I mean, it's not even hindsight's being 2020. Actually, I have a lot of content showing me on record saying this, but I knew he'd be special. The moment that I think I knew he was the real deal was, fall camp, his true freshman year. People weren't really sure what his whole game was, what his whole deal was, and he had a play like running around, classic Sam Darnold play, making a throw, making a play in like a freshman scrimmage kind of thing, and then our offensive coordinator turned back and was like, "It's a young Brett Favre," and that moment and that line will always stick with me. Of like, usually it's the opposite. Usually it's the true freshman quarterback like struggling, and you're having to like go through growing pains and all that. That wasn't Sam, and obviously his college career was super successful, and just super happy for him that he found success in Minnesota and hopefully in Seattle, because to your point, or to our conversation earlier, like there was a world where he had another thing not go his way and his career never resurrected, and he would have been labeled as like an NFL bust, which would have been unfair. So just happy for him and excited this year for him too.
I think his story just ties in with the theme of this podcast. We talked about timing and luck. And here's a guy who goes to the Jets, it looks like he's a bust, and then, gets into the right system with the right coach and KOC, and his seemingly his entire career changes for the better. So it's like, to your point, it's like what would have happened if he never went to Minnesota? Like, it could have gone very, very differently. But no, super happy for Sam. Obviously hoping he does not do that well this year because I'm a 49ers fan, but he's awesome. Best college quarterback of all time. Who you got?
Best college quarterback of all time. I'll go Cam Newton as the answer, my final answer here. I think he was built different. What he carried and the stakes that he carried in an budding Alabama era, what he did was unreal. But to give you just a non-generic answer, one guy that people forget about that was the best opposing quarterback that I saw on film as an active player is Marcus Mariota. People forget about how unreal he was in college because his NFL career, he never had that like next ascending level that Cam did. But dude, Mariota was different because Mariota was way faster than Cam, or like a notch faster than Cam. Dynamic, was super smooth in the pocket, incredibly strong arm. So Mariota always has a unique place in my brain because I think partly because he's shyer, or he's more shy, and like his temperament's not as like loud as some of these other big time quarterbacks, and he's not in the media like an RG3 or like a Johnny Manziel. But dude, Marcus Mariota, don't sleep on how lethal he was.
Yeah, I wish his college career would have gone, because I remember watching Marcus too in college and being like, dude, this guy's the real deal and he's going to make some noise in the NFL. And then obviously, things went a little south. But
it'd be interesting if he got drafted in this era when being a dual threat quarterback was much more accepted and it was much more of a, hey, our scheme's going to evolve or adapt to you rather than the other way around. I think he could have had a lot more success.
Yeah, I always ask this question and I get a multitude of different answers, but college quarterbacks not panning out in the NFL, and we'll tie it to this year's class. Why do you think that some quarterbacks don't pan out versus others do? Like, is there a unifying theme or personality trait from what you've studied that contributes to success in the NFL?
I mean, it's going to be a broad word, but the unifying theme is environment. Like, I think there's a lot of guys that, to your Brock Purdy point earlier, if Brock Purdy lands on the Browns, is he where he's at right now? Probably not. If Baker Mayfield had landed in San Francisco, he probably doesn't have the trials and tribulations that he had early on in his career, and he's probably an absolute baller and a top 10 consensus quarterback his entire career. So environment, the situation around you, it's the blessing and the curse of football. It's the ultimate team sport, which means, you can be elite. Here's a better way to put it. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback ever. I could make the argument if Tom Brady landed on the Jets back his rookie year, there's a world where no one knows him. You could never say that about a baseball player or a basketball player. I don't care if LeBron James was on the Cavs. I mean, he literally went to the worst team. He went to the Cavs, and he's great. That's just that's the thing with football, because it's not just the talent, but it's the confidence, it's the psyche, it's the opportunities you get. The margin is so thin, and you need everything around you to work out, to build that momentum, to not look back. And football is its own beast, and a quarterback's its own beast in that regard.
Ultimate team sport. I mean, it's the perfect way to put it. Last, I guess, rapid fire is not the right word because we're going pretty in depth here, but who are you most looking forward to watching from this year's QB class, rookie class?
Yeah, they're all intriguing for their own right. I would say just fascinated to see what happens with Shedeur Sanders. I was shocked he fell. I think anyone who says they were expecting him to fall is I got an argument with a guy at a bar this weekend. Not that. That sounds like I was like fist fighting him. Not at all. It's like, oh yeah, I knew Shedeur would fall. I'm like, get out of here. I think Shador's legit. I thought his film was really good. I had him as a first-round quarterback, so fascinated to see how that situation plays out. And then Tyler Shuck is I'm gearing up to make a video. I don't think there's a rookie quarterback in recent memory that has more pressure to perform in year one than Tyler Shuck. That sounds like a hot take and a random take, but here's where I'm at. If he gets on opportunity year one and doesn't perform, that means the Saints are going to be at the top of next year's draft class. And Tyler Shuck has the least buzz of any top round quarterback we've seen in recent memory, where the Saints are going to have to draft the next guy because they're going to be drafting at the top. Tyler Shuck's not going to have that momentum necessarily, and he's just not going to have the buzz and the fan and organizational support to stick around for a year too. When most young quarterbacks, obviously you want them to do well, but most young quarterbacks are given a 2-year limit, period, or like a 2-year leash, period. I think you can make the argument Tyler Shuck's only got a 1-year leash, and even if, so Matt, the counter to that is, well, Max, what if he doesn't play? And what if the starter is the Oklahoma cat, Spencer Rattler? Well, that to me is a sign in itself of like, if he's not playing and the Saints don't play well, they'll be at the top of the draft. So the Tyler Shuck, oh, and by the way, he's 26 years old. So you can't have like give him time to develop thing. I think the leash for Tyler Shuck will be as short as any rookie top round quarterback that we've seen in recent memory, and I'm interested to see how that plays out.
I need to get your Shador take because I mean you brought up Tyler Shuck, but the Saints are a perfect example of a team that when their pick rolled around, I was like, this is 100% Shador. Like this has to be him. Not only because of the you mentioned the film, what he showcased at Colorado. But also, like the Saints, in my opinion, are coming off Drew Brees, who is a top 5 quarterback all time. You could make the argument for. Like they, in my opinion, need to fill that void, and they need to fill it fast. And I wouldn't say they're the most maybe recognizable fan base or most recognized NFL team or have like the largest fan base, but like again, they're coming off this historic run with Drew Brees, and they need to fill that with someone who can step into those shoes and has the confidence to do it. So, like, them not taking Shador, like, it just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I was the same boat, and here's my little self-plug before we finish up, but I literally made a YouTube video on, like, how the heck did Tyler Shuck get drafted in the second round? Because to me, it's crazy. I covered him in the Pac-12 Network when he was in 2020. And it's a piece of content I'm super proud of. I tracked his film from 2020, his first start, and then every year in the progression, and then watched his film last year and kind of broke it down. He's got really good film at Louisville that last year, and he's got great measurables. It's incredibly clean tape. He has like virtually no plays where it's like, what the heck are you doing? He's got the arm strength. Like I can see now, and again, in that video, I think it's titled When 7 Years of College Pays Off, the Tyler Shuck story. But you can see what the Saints saw on film, and I'm interested to see if it translates. But I say that point of like, I can see how the Saints told themselves that's the right pick. But again, I'm with you. I was shocked it wasn't Shador or at least Jackson Dart as well at that pick. But yeah, we'll see. Tyler Shuck getting his shot.
Yeah, we'll post a link to that video in the description. So if you want to go check that out, and obviously all your other links if you want to check out Max, more of his work. Max, I've held you hostage for too long here, so we're gonna wrap up.
Fun, man.
I do have one last question for you, and it comes from a video that you reposted on Facebook, and I'm sure you reposted on other platforms. And I think the video was from 5 or 6 years ago. But it caught my eye, and I think it's going to do a good job of kind of bringing together everything that we've talked about today and some of the themes that we've addressed. The video is titled "Life Doesn't Owe You Anything." And I'm curious what that phrase means to you and just the importance of those words in your own life and your own journey.
Was it a video that I made or was it of someone else?
Of someone else. It was an entrepreneur speaking. I forget his name. He's one of the sharks on Shark Tank.
Yeah. Dang, I got to go back and see what that video was. Well, first off, that phrase, and it's probably why I posted it 5 or 6 years ago, it embodies not having a victim mentality, which is something that I refused to have when my football career didn't work out. I mean, we can talk about all the reasons things didn't work out, but I was never going to be a poor me, point the finger, all that stuff. Like it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So that's where things go right away is, you know, doesn't owe you anything. But I also think, you know, I get, it's funny in my personal life. This is something I say nowadays. My least favorite word in the English language is deserve. And to the point where I won't cut off normal people, but I'll cut off my wife, which might sound crazy, when she says, "Oh, you deserve this." Well, if you're saying I deserve this, that means someone else does not deserve that, just by the meaning of the word. And so people will be like, "Oh, you deserve to have success. Oh, you deserve that job." Well, if I deserve it, well, then tell me who's getting fired from that job so I can have it. And it's a little quirk that I have, but it's a mentality thing of like, you don't deserve anything in this life. Like you go earn it, and hopefully you get it. And the pushback to that is like, oh, well, Max, everyone deserves to have a warm meal and, you know, have shelter. Sure, that's obviously taking like the extreme of my point. But I will say, the person who might be struggling for their meal, if they keep telling themselves they deserve a meal and they deserve and I should have this, my gut says they're going to go down a negative spiral and all that, versus the person who might be at the rock bottom and says, I need to go claw my way out of this thing. I don't deserve anything. I'm betting the house on that second person to ultimately get that meal. So, you know, it's just I know you didn't ask for that exact pillar, but I just think it's a strong mentality to have, and you know, taking ownership and accountability for your own life.
No, it's good, and it's a bias for action. Like you get into the mentality to have bias for action. You know, we spoke about action and luck. I just think if you believe that more things are within your control and that you can influence more of your surroundings and that you are in control of your own life, I think ultimately that's going to serve you well. Now, it doesn't guarantee that it will lead to the outcomes that you desire, but it's a whole lot better than what you were just mentioning, you know, being in this victim mentality and thinking that you deserve things. So I love that. I love that perspective. I love that point. Max, before we sign off, where can people find you and more of your work?
Yeah, I'm on all the major social platforms, Max Brown. I guess on TikTok, I'm Brown Max. Brown has an E at the end. But yeah, super active on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Check my stuff up there. I know we talk a lot about football, but sometimes I tap into husband and wife content with my wife, and some life content as well, some golf stuff too. So yeah, go check out my stuff.
Love it, man. This has been absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough for your time today. Really, really great to learn more about you and your journey. And obviously, we had some fun there with some college football content and some fun rapid fire questions. But dude, again, can't thank you enough for your time.
For sure. Thanks for giving me the platform, Nick. Good chatting.